Gifted hackers can access data from a government website, a hospital medical system, or even a car. Most are not aware when their personal information is stolen, sold, and used until it's too late. Today's guest is Alissa Knight. Alissa is a recovering hacker of 20 years, a cybersecurity influencer, content creator, and the principal cybersecurity analyst at Alissa Knight and Associates. She is the author of the recently released book, Hacking Connected Cars. Alissa has been quoted in articles by Brian Krebs and featured in numerous magazine articles, including PC Magazine, Wired, and Forbes. I'm your host, Chris Parker, and this is the Easy Prey Podcast. Alissa, thank you so much for coming on the Easy Prey Podcast today.
Thank you, Chris, for having me.
So I know in your bio you refer to yourself as a recovering hacker. So how did you get interested in hacking, and why do you consider yourself recovering now?
So I think it started off as a joke. It was, I don't know. I always wonder, like, people have to be getting sick of me constantly saying the same bio every single time. Like, because, I mean, I have a few followers, and, they some of them make sure to watch every single thing that comes out. And I'm like, man, they've got to be tired of hearing the same thing over. I'm going to come up with something funny and new. And so it was like, recovering hacker works. So it started out as a joke, but I started hacking when I was 13. It's the typical Hollywood story. I finally got caught. I was hacking a government network, and the law enforcement was waiting for me at school when I arrived and arrested me right when I got there. Yeah, it was so embarrassing. I mean, it was at the time I was like, "Oh, this is cool," but it was really embarrassing, especially now that I look back on it. But, I mean, some kids get arrested for killing someone or drugs. I got arrested for hacking a government network.
Of all the things you could get arrested for, I'd much rather know someone who got arrested for hacking than someone who got arrested for murder.
This is true. And I don't look good in orange. So
it's not the new black? Sorry, bad joke.
Not for me, no. Great. That was great, though. Yeah, so the charges were dropped. When I was arrested, they just played this out very badly. It was in the 90s, so they really didn't know what they were doing. Mm-hmm. And so I got off and went to go work for the U.S. intelligence community in cyber warfare. I started a company. It was my first startup. It was called NetStream, and I sold that to a public company. And then that was sold for about $3 million. And then I sold my second startup when I was 27 for about $5 million. And I always made sure not to bring in venture capital, right? So I always owned, 100% of the company, or 90%, 95, 98% of the company. I even though I ended up later starting a venture capital fund, I didn't like working with VCs. I didn't want their hands in the butt.
Yeah, they own you in a sense.
I'm sorry?
They own you in a sense.
They do. And I have this thing with like being told what to do, which is what has always kind of made me this horrible employee. And so I was kind of left to just be an entrepreneur, because that's all I could really do, because I couldn't really hold a job, because I kept pissing off every boss I ever had. And so that's me. So I'm a serial entrepreneur as well. So I've started and sold multiple companies. I'm on my third.
All in cybersecurity, or that vertical?
Yeah. So, but my current company, Brian Thorne, it started out as a defense contractor providing counterinsurgency support in Afghanistan and Iraq. And then, so there was a time there where I didn't want to be a hacker anymore. I didn't want to be in cybersecurity anymore. So I traded my keyboard in for an M4 and an AR-15, went out to close quarter combat and SEER training, and got into defense contracting, if you remember the Blackwater days. And so we were providing coin support. And then later transitioned, knowing that the conflicts in the Middle East were going to wind down. I wanted to get back in cybersecurity. Didn't want to be shot at anymore. And so went back into cybersecurity. And my first return back was actually running cybersecurity at a nuclear power plant, San Onofre nuclear generating station.
I'm close enough that I care about the fact that there's someone good there.
Yeah, I want to say that I'm good. I want to think that I'm good. So I was leading penetration testing efforts for a pretty major plant out in Southern California, and yeah, so the rest is kind of history. So, and then, so Brian Thorne went into cybersecurity at that point, and was no longer doing defense contracting. And we got more into private sector stuff, critical infrastructure protection. So I became a certified SCADA security architect. I began hacking SCADA systems. And then I think that was sort of where I just kind of got bit by the bug to hack embedded systems. I just got really big into hacking embedded systems. I wanted to do something different. I didn't want to be just this commodity pen test. Not that there's anything wrong with pen testers that focus on hacking traditional networks and systems, but I wanted it to be different. So I got this contract to hack connected cars and moved to Stuttgart, Germany. Stuttgart. I always say that wrong. I say it like a white girl. It's like Stuttgart or something like that. I don't know. So I moved there.
I lived in Germany, but I don't think I can say Stuttgart.
Yeah,
I don't know if I can get. I don't have that.
I can never say. I always sound like this white chick when I say it. And I even got made fun of when I lived there for the way I said it. So I stopped saying it. I stopped trying. But I lived in Stuttgart for a while, and then that's where I got big into hacking connected cars. I started hacking cars for tier 1 and automakers as well, tier 1 OEMs, and had a really good time. Continued to do it for the next few years, and then wrote a book on it. Wrote a book on hacking connected cars, and now I'm focused on hacking APIs.
So when it comes to connected cars, does it make you nervous to get in a connected car now?
You know, I'm one of those weirdos that if it's my time to go, it's my time to go. You know, I mean, I'm in the I'm trading in my car for a Tesla, so I'm all about technology. We just finished building, my wife and I just finished building our house in Las Vegas, and everything's connected. I can talk to Alexa from any room. And if I say her name right now, everything will get really loud. But so, but at the same time, it also gives me an awesome cyber range. My own house becomes my own cyber range for hacking, connected IoT devices and smart home stuff. So, so that's
is it an issue of like it's acceptable risk for you?
Like,
I know something at some point something's going to get compromised, but I'm not that worried about it.
Look, the fact that I love hacking connected cars, it really speaks to how important I think it is, because for me, it's one thing if you deface a website, it's another thing if you crash a car with your family in it. I think things are going to fundamentally change very soon here. And the thing is that now we're looking at cybersecurity vulnerabilities that are affecting life and safety, right? You look at the mHealth research that I published recently with Approve, where I hacked these mobile health apps and APIs and was able to access other patient data and clinician reports. And like, if I wanted to kill you, Chris, why walk up to you and shoot you when I can just hack an API and find out what you're allergic to, and find out you're allergic to bees and fill your house with bees. It definitely, I think, expands the concern for me, where the vulnerabilities that I'm discovering and researching have real life impacts. Yes, the other stuff is important, but when you're talking about things like I can remotely start and stop the engine of any particular car maker on the road, or lock and unlock the doors, or control the steering wheel, you're talking about a major problem, And so I think that's kind of what brought me to where I am today as a content creator, where you're probably wondering, okay, what the heck is it you do? I'm still trying to figure out what it is I do. But, I just kind of say if a hacker and a content creator were to have a baby, I would be the product of that. So, so for me, I'm blending hacking with content creation. I love video. I love cinematography. I've really gotten big into video. So a lot of the research I do is backed by like a 1 or 2 minute theatrical trailer. So you look at the law enforcement vehicle hack. I don't know if you saw that video, but that and the mHealth video, it's very kind of DreamWorksy, it's kind of Hollywoody. And I like that. I love that. I love how I can blend hacking at a command shell or a Metasploit shell with content creation. And I think my clients, cybersecurity vendors that work with me, dig that. So I think it makes for a different story.
Well, because it's not, I think cybersecurity gets very bland,
It
uninteresting,
does. It's the same thing.
geeky, nerdy.
Yeah.
Let
It's
me put on my glasses and talk like Urkel type of things. People,
Yeah, it's sort of the same thing every year, right? So I mean, I think another thing that drove me was I was tired of seeing the same white papers, the same blogs about how great we're really awesome at talking about ourselves. And you apply that to companies, and companies have even bigger budgets to talk about themselves. And I think CISOs are just tired of it. I think I'm speaking to CISOs through my storytelling, through my videos, through my podcasts like this, through through the white papers I write, through the videos I create. I feel like I'm speaking to them who are wanting to know, does the product really do what the marketing material says it does? That's what I think is so important today that vendors are missing. They're putting out these papers about their features and their capabilities and what it does versus why you need it. And I'm a big believer in Simon Sinek's people don't buy what you do, they buy why you need it.
Yeah.
And I really try and help create the blue ocean strategy for companies and help them execute on that. Have you read that book, Blue Ocean Strategy?
No, I haven't.
Oh, let me tell you about it, Chris.
Yes, tell me.
It's an amazing book. So speaking of which, that's my client calling me right now. One of my clients. So basically, the interesting thing about Blue Ocean Strategy is it was written by two MBAs out of Harvard, and the book really starts off with the story about Cirque du Soleil, how the creators of Cirque du Soleil didn't come out and create. They didn't want to compete against the circus. Cirque du Soleil wanted to redefine what the circus was. And so the concept of Blue Ocean Strategy is that market share and demand, it can be artificially created. It doesn't need to be stolen from your competitors. And it's the idea that you eliminate your competition by making them irrelevant, where people don't care about the difference between this deception technology and this one, for Elusive, who just called me, and or this NDR and this NDR, this EDR and this EDR. What they care about is just eliminating the competition completely, where you're not comparing apples to apples and commoditizing your product by comparing on features and price alone. You're telling a story about what you can do for your customer. And so that's what I'm trying to do through this perspective. Now, Chris, what's very different about my content is that a lot of the content out there for security is told through the eyes of a blue team member. It's told through the eyes of the defender. Very rarely do we see content being told through the eyes of the adversary. And that's what I'm trying to do with my content.
Do you think there's a reason why it's more... Are CISOs thinking more from the perspective of defense and not from the perspective of how are people attacking me?
Yeah,
what are they thinking?
I don't think it's necessarily wrong. I'm not saying like you shouldn't think that way, but at the end, I also always go back to Sun Tzu. You can't defeat the enemy that you don't know. And I think that's why it's really important to mix that defender content with that breaker content, or that adversarial content is what I like to call it. But because you in order to defeat your enemy, you need to know who your enemy is, how they think, how they operate. And that's what I think was so neat about that recent deception technology. I don't know if you saw that one, but it was called I effing hate Elusive. And it, the neat thing about that research and that report and that video was you see actually what deception technology does to disrupt the adversary's decision-making process, and how frustrated I was and how much I effing hated Elusive. And it's, for me, I want CISOs to see that. I want them to see because tell me, Chris, how often do you see CISOs actually being able to visualize the return on investment in their cybersecurity products? It's
that's the biggest thing is no one looks at that as return on investment. It's looked at as risk mitigation at best.
Right.
It's like,
insurance policy.
How much can I afford that will make it look like if I do get hacked, at least the public will think I've done the right thing. And it's not about preventing it; it's about public relations. Sometimes
public relations, yeah. I even ran into a CISO one time that said, you know what, it's cheaper for me just to pay the fines and pay for the incident response cleanup than to pay for the prevention. Obviously didn't agree with that position, but there's some CISOs out there who think that way, and treat cybersecurity as just sort of not having that auto insurance policy for when you get in a car crash, it's cheaper to pay to repair your car kind of thing.
Well, and sometimes I think it comes from, it's not my data, it's my customer's data, so it doesn't impact me. It's kind of that theory that people look at politics is they're spending somebody else's money. Well, if it's somebody else's data that's getting compromised, what do I care?
Exactly.
I'm exaggerating it a bit, but I think it's a little bit of that mentality. And
I certainly don't want to stereotype because, we can't obviously say that that's all CISOs. I think there's just some individuals out there who just, feel that the response is cheaper than the prevention, right? I also don't believe that there is true prevention. I think that, and there may be a lot of people out there who may want to key my car for saying this, but I don't think that I think we need to unlearn the concept of prevention, because I think that no matter what you do, no matter how much money you spend, they will eventually get a foothold. And I think that's what I love about my research, either with the mHealth and the Fire API stuff that I'm doing right now, or the deception stuff, is that and again, it goes back to Sun Tzu. It's not betting on the enemy not coming. It's the fact that the enemy will come, but we need to make our position unassailable. And I think that's what I love about my research, is that it tells the story that, hey, look, you're not going to be able to prevent me from coming. You're not going to be able to prevent the adversary from getting a foothold on your network. What you do is you lower your mean time to detection and mean time to response, because there's no such thing anymore as prevention. If they want in, they will get in and they'll figure out a way. And at the end of the day, if there's no vulnerability to exploit, they're just going to send an email to Chris and tell me to double click on that PDF attachment because I have a purchase order for you that you've been waiting for, or whatever. But I mean, it's at the end of the day, we humans are the weakest link in security, and if they want in, they'll find a way in. It's detecting them once they're there.
And I think that's almost where people get into trouble, is when they think they have an impenetrable system.
Agreed.
They stop. Agreed. At that point, you stop thinking about, okay, well, how do I, assuming they get in, how do I prevent them from getting, not just the golden eggs, but how do I keep them from getting the goose?
It's the arrogance, right? It's and we become, what's the word I'm looking for? Just almost, not really, lazy is not really the right word. That's the word I'm looking for. Complacent. Thank you, Chris. Yeah. Haven't had enough coffee today. But yeah, I think we just become complacent, and also I want to, in speaking in defense of the CISOs out there, I think there's just so much to choose from.
Yeah.
There's so much crap out there. Like, I mean, it's not literally crap, but like, there's a lot of stuff out there that's like, we live in a very exciting time right now where there's all these new product categories. Breach and attack simulation. Does that mean that I don't need to do penetration testing anymore? Does that mean I don't need to do vulnerability scanning anymore? I have this breach and attack simulation solution that's automating pen testing for me. And then you have the deception technology category. That's really cool. And I mean, there's all this stuff out there, and I honestly don't think CISOs know what to buy anymore. I don't think CISOs know what to choose and what to do. And I think that's another positive outcome of kind of what I'm doing right now, is I'm helping CISOs sort of weed through all that noise and figure out what it is exactly they need to do.
So let's circle back to mHealth. Can you tell the listeners what mHealth is, how it works?
Sure. So there's all these different product categories, and I want your listeners to understand that they're not one and the same. So you have mHealth, you have telehealth, you have telemedicine, you have all these different product categories, right? So what I'm doing right now and is it's a two-phased project, vulnerability research project sponsored by Approve. And what it is the first phase was downloading 30 mHealth apps and hacking the APIs that they talk to. I was able to hack every single one of the apps, right? So there were hard-coded usernames and passwords, hard-coded API keys, tokens, like it's that, but yeah, it's 2021 and we're still doing that. And not only API secrets for that hospital or that health company, but also API secrets for third parties like payment processors and other stuff like that. So really nasty stuff, easily reverse engineered with free tools like MobSF. And I also, what was interesting about this research from my 2019 research where I hacked all those fintech and financial services mobile apps, with this one, I actually got to go after the APIs. We got some hospitals and some companies involved that allowed us to target their APIs. And that was really interesting because I was able to take the attack from the initial kind of passive attack where I'm not really throwing packets at the victim's network or APIs. I was just doing all of the reverse engineering of the app locally and finding all the API secrets. And then to be able to take that to an active attack where I was actively going after the APIs. And the results were startling. I mean, I was able to access thousands of patient records, not just information on inpatients at the hospital who were admitted into the hospital, but their family information. Because when you went into the hospital, some of these hospitals would take a picture of the patient, so I saw their pictures. Their next of kin, their family information, and their PII, which is why PHI is worth so much on the dark web, Chris, because it's worth like over 1,000 times more than a credit card number. And it's because of all of the data in a PHI record. It's everything. It's your allergy information. It's, whether or not you're HIV positive, if you, have, just whatever's wrong with you in a single record. So it was, I think this is probably, in my 20 years, I think this is probably the most jaw-dropping research I've just shocking research I've been involved in. Now in phase 2, I'm going after FHIR APIs. And what that is, Chris, is so the federal government, CMS, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services. So CMS passed this final rule, that patients must be able to have access to their patient data. And the plumbing system for this would be FHIR APIs. And FHIR is its own acronym. And so I would need to Google that one too. Okay, here it is. Fast Healthcare Interoperability Resources. FHIR. So it's not FIRE, it's FHR. So obviously this made an amazing pun opportunity for some really cool puns like playing with fire and putting the fire out for the topic and name of my research. We had a lot of fun with that. So we ultimately decided on playing with fire. And so that's what made for the really cool teaser trailers on my YouTube channel. But in addition to the fire stuff, there's something called Health Level 7, HL7.org, which is a separate organization from CMS. And so CMS is basically, how do I describe them? They're who the payers and the providers listen to. Like, if they want to get paid for Medicare or Medicaid patients services, they have to listen to CMS or they don't get paid. They're very important people.
The rules and guidelines and systems.
Yeah, they're kind of like the
back office.
Gestapo? Like, they're like the Gestapo for health. And I don't know if I'm allowed. Is that politically correct to say? But the CMS is sort of like the big brother for health, for this, for health and stuff in the United States. And so they made a final. So before there was HL7. And then now is FHIR. And they finally decided on FHIR is the standard. And FHIR is not you and I going to Best Buy and buying, yes, we would like to buy one package shrink-wrapped FHIR API, please. It's like a document that tells you how to implement this and the framework for doing it, but it doesn't tell you how to secure them. So you and I, so there's two major companies in the United States responsible for provisioning this data and information out. am I allowed to say? Well, I'll say it anyway. Cerner and Epic. These are the two major. They make up a majority of the U.S. healthcare market. So they have something like Open Epic. I think they call it Epic on Fire. So then you have Cerner, who they have their Fire API sandbox and inside of there. Now, the really interesting thing here, this is the scary thing that you might think is scary, is and your listeners, is the way it works is if you and I want to start a company, and let's say we're in Pakistan, and a lot of the companies I researched actually were in Pakistan, Israel, all the Middle East, India. You and I can come and say, hey, Chris, let's have a new startup. Let's start a company, and we're gonna pull data, and we're gonna communicate in and pull patient records from Epic. We can do that. We can go to open.epic, and we can create an API. And they even give you a wizard. There's even a GUI wizard that you can build the API client, and you can feed, pull right in, pull that Epic data. You can build this client. You can publish it into something. I think they call it the App Orchard, which is really cool. I really like what Epic and CERN are doing. They're doing some really cool stuff with Fire. But the interesting thing here is that they don't have any control over our lack of security. Mm-hmm. So if you and I don't secure it at all, then and we're pulling their data and we're communicating their stuff, they don't have any control over that. Mm-hmm. So it's really scary. For them it's a challenge, because you have these companies that are just building these clients, and they're pulling data from their APIs. They don't know where that data is going. They don't know how it's being secured. People are just pulling this data, and it's PHI. It's patient data. Ugh. And so it's scary. I could go all day about this.
So is there anything that patients can do about it other than don't tell your doctor stuff you don't want them to know?
It's interesting because I went to so about a year ago, 2 years ago, I got cancer, and actually this is the first time I've ever talked about this publicly. But I went through the surgery, and it was really interesting because I got this email, and it was like, your clinician report and your blood work data is available on this site, and you can go log and get it. I was like, oh my God. And there was a mobile app for it. I was like, what is happening right now? I didn't authorize this. Who is this company? Why do they have my data from the surgery and from my x-rays, and what is happening right now? And so this is what's happening. It's you go to a hospital, you go to a doctor, and you'll get this email. I think it's called MyChart. Anyway, so you go to the site, and you can grab your medical data. It's just sitting there, and I don't ever remember signing anything for that. I don't remember saying that this other provider over here and this company over here that makes a mobile app, probably outsourced, to some company in the Middle East somewhere. And, now I need this mobile app. I got to go down from the app store. I don't know if the API is secure. I wanted to hack this shit. Sorry for my language. Bleep that out later if you have to. But, I didn't authorize any of this, and I wanted, what's the security around this? This is my PHI. I think that's what's really appealing to me in the kind of research that I do, because for me, it has meaningful impact on people's life and safety. And, it's way different. Like I said, the days of World of Hell and mass website defacements are gone. That was 20 years ago. Now it's all about money. It's about profiting from the data you steal, because it's worth more than oil now. Yeah, it's worth more than Bitcoin, whatever. So.
Do you see things moving towards, rather than people trying to hack my bank account, they're trying to hack my personally identifiable information, my health records, and sell that, because then they're not, I don't know that it's happened. And, if I don't know that it's happened, I got nowhere to report it. If you steal from my bank account, you bet I'm going to raise heck everywhere I go. But I'm never going to know if you get my medical records.
Yeah, and it's not like Chris Parker is paying $40,000 a month to subscribe to threat intelligence platform, to constantly scrape the dark web looking for dumps containing your name. And the average Joe on Main Street or the average Jane on Main Street isn't either. And so I think a lot of people don't know. A lot of people never went out there to find out what exactly was in the what was that credit agency that was hacked?
No, the Equifax. Yep.
Yeah, no one went out there looking for the Equifax breach searchable web interface to find what data on you was published on the dark web from the Equifax breach. I think, I don't know. I think maybe we as humans, I won't even say Americans, but maybe we as humans like to play ostrich and put our head in the sand and say, if I don't know what's been published out there about me, if I don't see it, it's not going to bother me. But, it's scary to think about PHI breaches because, we all individually have health concerns and we all individually have health issues. And we don't want that out there. I don't care if my Bank of America or Chase credit card number is out there. It's probably been compromised more times than I have fingers. But, how do you issue new healthcare information?
Yeah.
How do I go to you and say, hey, Chris, sorry, your credit card was breached. We're going to send you new one in the mail. How do I send you new health information in the mail? How do I send you I'm going to undo this or undo that from your health history so you've got a brand new clean health history? You can't do that. It stays with you.
Do the APIs allow for pushing information into the health records, or is it just pulling information out?
Obviously, it depends on the provider, depends on the company. They'll have partnerships with other companies that obviously fill with data that they've got. So, like if I go into surgery, if I have new health information from a particular provider, it needs to be put into this, behind this Fire API. Obviously they can place that data there, upload that data there. But a lot of the things like Fire, it's meant for patients to be able to pull that data. But that is a great question though. So for me, the vulnerabilities were, what access do I have to view other people's information? And this is around a vulnerability called BOLA vulnerabilities, broken object level authorization. And so a great analogy I'd like to give your listeners, if they don't know what the heck that even means, is if you and I went to a cocktail party and we went to a coat check. I actually get freaked out by coat checks. They freak me out. I never give my stuff to coat check. But let's say you're standing in front of me and like, ooh, Chris has a really nice coat. I love that. It's Prada coat. I'm behind you and you get the number 18 and you give the coat check your coat and you're maybe you give them your wallet for some reason because Chris isn't thinking and and your keys. And I come up behind you like, I want that Prada coat. So I get the number 17 for some reason. And I take my number and I take a Sharpie and I change that 7 to an 8. And like 30 minutes later, I go to the coat check. I see you're still here. And I go to the coat check and I ask for 18. Now, the coat check person has authenticated me because I have a ticket and it looks legit. But they haven't authorized me to take your coat and wallet and keys home. So that's a great example of a BOLA vulnerability. I'm authenticated. I have a token. I have a username and password. I'm legitimately allowed to communicate with that API, but I'm not authorized to pull your patient data. So that's a perfect example of the way a BOLA vulnerability works. And that was systemic across all of the APIs I tested.
Is that from careless programming? People just trying to make things easy, test environment, like stage environments that just never got, effectively moved to production without some piece being taken out?
Yeah, it's. I mean, I think it's a combination of things. I think it's a combination of a lack of shift left security, meaning security being placed into the SDLC, and to the time that the code is being written, all the way to shift right security, or was it shift left shield right, where you're not protecting it in production. The problem is, a combination of things as well, where, involving a lack of certificate pinning. Like, why was I able to insert myself in the middle of that API request between the mobile app and the API? That's a lack of certificate pinning. With that code, it's insecure coding. It's insecure programming where we're hard coding API secrets and tokens here on the app. We are not making sure that who's requesting a particular object ID is indeed the person who should be seeing that. Because these are all just IDs. It's patient /100, patient /101, 102. They're just object IDs. And so what the API is doing is saying, hey, that exists. It's a legitimate request that I understand, and it's being requested, so I'm going to provide it. The only problem is that Alissa is not Chris, and I'm requesting your patient data.
Yeah, I've seen that on websites before. I'll be, logged into my account and log into something, and in the URL it's, ID 4583, and I'm like, what happens if I make that an 84? And I'm like, oh, that's somebody else's account information. That's not good.
Yeah, so that's a great example of a BOLA vulnerability where, it used to be called insecure direct object reference, and they changed the name of it. I think it was OWASP that changed the name of it. But. So there's this OWASP API top 10 list, and it's the top 10 API vulnerabilities. And guess what number 1 is? BOLA.
Just changing an ID once you've authenticated through some other mechanism.
It's the easiest hack in the world. And, I think, it's also, to go back to your previous question, it's also a lack of penetration testing by the companies themselves, where they're not eating their own dog food. They're not testing their own APIs. And or some of them are outsourcing it. So, they're trusting that the people that they outsourced the development to are actually doing security testing. And in a lot of cases, clearly it's not.
I know I had a previous episode. I'm trying to remember who it was. And we were talking about pen testing. And having come from an IT background, not by any means a security person, the company hired someone for the purposes of, insurance. Hey, we needed to have a pen test done because it'll get the insurance rates down. So they did a pen test done. I thought, well, I'm sure they're going to find stuff because, I inherited, who knows what I inherited. And it was, the stuff that I did was pretty good, but there was stuff that was inherited that I didn't even know it existed. Yeah. That they were able to find through the pen test. And I'm like, oh my gosh, it doesn't matter how good I am. Not that I'm that great. If someone else somewhere in the past in some legacy system didn't do it right then, I don't even know about it. How do I protect against that?
Yeah, actually, that's some new content that I want to work on here soon. And the concept, what you're referring to, is attack surface management. And I'm actually going to be doing this for Elusive. A big component of their deception technology is being able to catalog the assets in your environment and know what it is you have, because you can't protect what you don't know you have.
Yeah.
And, and you brought up a great reference right there where that was, true to the case where, hey, look, I have these assets I didn't know existed, are reachable from the internet. And the same thing with APIs. That happens with APIs where a company will have over 1,000 APIs. How is the CISO going to know about every single API, which ones are internet facing, which ones are serving PII, which ones that he or she needs to think about securing? And that's attack surface management. And so, it's very important in any defense in depth strategy to know what it is you've got in your environment, because the worst breach is the breach of an asset that you weren't patching, that you didn't know existed. And so that's such an important feature and capability.
So I think as consumers, we should just totally freak out then.
That's the thing. Unfortunately, you're not the first person to ask me that question, because it's not like you can drive to your local Best Buy and say, hey, Kim, do you have any API security products? What aisle is that? Unfortunately, we as consumers need to rely on the automakers to make more secure cars, the healthcare companies to write more secure code. We just don't have any that's out of our hands, and it's unfortunate. But that's the point of my research, right? Mm-hmm. Is to wake big corporate America up and say, like, hey, look, we need to be doing better. We're going to end up in Alyssa's research, but in all sincerity, it's, for me, I think that's why this is so important, because when things like this go unchecked, like Capitol Hill passing federal rules and laws and regulations around a lot of things that we don't fully understand, in many cases don't even know how to secure, this is when you run into problems like this.
Yeah, and that's the difficulty, I think, for consumers, is we don't have the knowledge of what's happening, and then we don't have any power about it. I mean,
yeah, it's like
in theory they say, your power is your wallet. You could take your money and go somewhere else. Like, well, I don't know that health provider B is going to be any better about maintaining my patient records. How do I, like, the CISO is not going to sit down with me and explain all their security tactics.
Yeah. It's true. But I mean, and I think that's also the thing that gets me up in the morning too, is, I need to be making a difference. And for me, I like focusing. If you look at a lot of the vulnerability research I've done, it's very labyrinthine work. Like, it's not like you can throw a rock and hit a pen tester that knows how to hack a car or hack APIs. Even, I mean, even hackers are switching their attention over to APIs because they know that's where the data is. But it's not an immediate thing where you can immediately go over and know how to do this. You have to understand a lot of the things you're looking at, like JSON. You have to understand a lot of the tools because they're different tools. It's not like you can load up a Metasploit scanner, auxiliary scanner, and do this stuff against APIs. A lot of the times, if you look at my videos, I am in Postman, an API client, or I'm in Burp Suite. You have to know how to use the tool, and you have to know what you're doing.
You mentioned Burp Suite.
Yes.
Was that
cool.
Jake?
Did you? I thought you had.
I had one of the guys who built Burp Suite. I had on, and now I feel horrible that I can't remember his name. I'm
horrible with names, so don't beat yourself up about it.
Portswigger. Yes, I had one of the guys from Portswigger on. So yeah, so like, hey, I
it's a great tool. It's a great tool. I actually used to use Postman all the time, and then I was like, you know what? I think it's time to learn Burp Suite. And so, they have this awesome interceptor that you can use as a proxy for this. And the neat thing is it actually will decrypt the SSL traffic for you. So it presents a certificate in both directions and decrypts that traffic. It's really cool. But I used to use a command line tool called SSL Midem, and now I can do everything all within one single tool. Whereas before it was Postman and SSL Midem. I can do all of that in a single tool with Burp Suite. So it's pretty neat.
I mean, I sit there and I think, wow, it's great that these tools exist for people who are using them for good.
Right. But what about evildoers? And
then there's evildoers out there that are taking these great tools and using them for their own nefarious purposes.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like, even as we've seen, an airplane can be used for good, and an airplane can also be used for bad. It's like that whole religious debate over guns. It's not guns that kill people; it's people that kill people. And but depending on what side of the debate you fall on.
Yeah.
But and I think exploits and these tools are important because we as defenders need them. But unfortunately, when they are in the wrong hands, they can be used also for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. So I remember I was talking with Troy Hunt, and one of the things that we were talking about was always, questioning, why are you providing information? Like, if someone's asking you for asking you for something, is to really think, like, well, why do they really need that? And rather than just filling out the form and giving them everything that they asked for, like, is this optional? Like, can I not give you this information? And really try to have some sense of minimizing our footprint when we can. Obviously, there's situations where we can't, but.
Right. It's interesting that you're bringing that up, Chris, actually, because a lot of the APIs have this problem where I'll notice that if you look at the API client, it may only display three fields out of the record that you're requesting. But if you intercept the traffic and look at it, you can see that the API is providing everything. And so, so they're leaving it up for the developer to filter through all of the data that they're sending back and show only the fields that you are wanting to show. And this leads to many problems, obviously, because if you're providing everything on that individual in the database and you're leaving it up to the client to filter out the results, you have this woman in the middle attack problem, like I like to call it. But where you have this issue where what happens if somebody's in the middle and can see all of that?
And I always wonder from, like, okay, so with my website, I constantly have to think about bandwidth. Just, it's not that Any one particular page view is a lot of traffic, but you get millions and millions of page views, and it becomes a huge amount of traffic. And saving a few bytes here and a few bytes there can make a difference on bills when you get lots of traffic. And I kind of think that, like, if I'm building an API, why am I shoving all the data when the person really only wants 3 fields? Obviously there's a security risk, but there's just the cost of maintaining all this bandwidth, pushing all this data, everything, slowing it down for everybody else. Like, I don't know. I think kind of like conservate, like
throwing a Volkswagen at a nail when a hammer will do.
Yeah. Like why if someone didn't ask for the whole medical history, why are you giving the whole medical history?
Yeah.
It just seems,
I think
there's no conservation there, so to speak.
I kind of feel, and it feels like I'm beating up on developers a lot right now, which I'm trying not to. It's really nothing personal, but I feel like it's lazy programming. I think it's just, why write all these additional, calls when I could just do it with one?
I'll be in defense and say I'm just providing flexibility for those that are using my API.
Forward compatibility.
Yes, forward compatibility. That's the phrase. I suppose there's always reasoning, and some of it may be very reasonable, and some of it is maybe not so reasonable. And obviously it is more difficult on both ends if you're saying, here, you have to, or I'm only going to specify which fields I want, and you're only going to send me those fields.
Right.
Both people have to do more work because of that.
Right. And the other thing is, it becomes more dangerous when it's fields from other object IDs or other records, if you will, where you're expecting the client to also filter out that particular user's data that you're wanting to show them. And I think that's, and I'm in the middle of fire research right now. I think that's going to probably be a lot of the findings that are going to be endemic to this, to an endemic problem across all these APIs, is that I think it's going to be a situation where they don't know, because anyone can log into these companies and build an API client that reaches into their data and talks to these Fire APIs and requests it. And they don't know necessarily what they're going to need or want access to. So let's provide them everything and they can filter out the rest. And I think that's what's going to end up happening. But we'll see.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I mean, I think it's that fundamental shift that is in the process of happening. The internet was designed, everybody trusts everybody.
Right.
When the first mail servers, hi, I'm a legitimate mail. Okay.
Yeah. And
it's a from address. Okay.
And see, that's a whole other show. That's a whole other episode where, we can go down that rabbit hole of zero trust, and I honestly think that shame on us from the very beginning for thinking the intranet was clean and trusted. Shame on us for trusting every employee just because they work for us. And I think zero trust should have been the foundational elements of the building blocks from the very beginning, because there is no inside and outside and within the castle walls and outside the castle walls. And
there is no wall. That'll be
there's not
new
even
meme.
A castle anymore now with the pandemic. The castle's gone. With a lot of companies. So there's a lot of companies that are just in a permanent work at home environment. And how do you trust that user's home network? Come on, you got to be kidding me. So I don't know. It's, for me, the interesting thing I think is how we've kind of evolved to this place where, we can't even trust. The users, can't trust the devices, right? So it's zero trust extending to ZT for users, ZT for network, ZT for devices, and it's everything. We have to construct around the idea that nothing at all can be trusted, and it's very exciting time. I think it's gonna get even more interesting. There's a lot of really interesting tech coming out of Israel. And I want to say that our new president, the new administration, talked about this, how America really isn't kind of innovating more. And this is kind of what I felt. Now I'm going to sound anti-American. I was like, oh my God, that Alissa Knight, she's anti-American too. But no, I feel like It's true, because there was a time there where it was like there really wasn't any new innovation. You would go to RSA conference or you'd go to Black Hat briefings, and it was kind of like lipstick on a pig, where everything was just new. They were features, but we were getting the concept of features mixed up with innovation and invention. And I think this, like, just they're actually, unfortunately, innovation is now coming from outside of Silicon Valley. It's coming from Tel Aviv. I think Tel Aviv is the new Silicon Valley. It is. There are incredibly brilliant people out there making some really great things. And so, I mean, a lot of these cybersecurity vendors obviously contact me to do content for them. And I mean, there's some stuff that's coming that's just mind blowing. And it didn't come out of San Jose, California. It came out of Tel Aviv, and so, but, I think it's just I think we live in a very exciting time, and I think research like this is going to be important, because CISOs need to know exactly what it is that's out there and how well it works and how well it stands up to a real live attack. Because you don't know until it actually happens, right? A lot of, before adversarial content, you kind of had to wait to see how your product stood up to an APT, and it was trial by fire, no pun intended.
Yeah.
Ooh, that's another pun I can use.
Trial by fire.
Trial by fire. Love it. Oh my God.
So let's wrap up here, because we're hitting up almost to an hour now. Okay. I think we could probably keep talking for a couple hours. But,
you and I could read that. I know it.
If people want to see your research, see what you're doing, where can they find that?
Yeah, so please definitely subscribe to my YouTube channel. Check out the playlists and the videos. I am also on LinkedIn. Definitely reach out to me on LinkedIn, and you can follow me on Twitter. Believe it or not, I also have an Instagram. It's a lot of it is pictures of me eating food or my food, but Twitter, LinkedIn, and YouTube. And I publish a new video and I live stream every week. So.
Oh, awesome. I will make sure all those will be linked in the show notes so people can find you without having to try to figure out how to spell things.
Yeah.
Because that'd make it easy for people.
Yeah. Everyone spells my name with a Y.
No matter how people spell a name, they're always going to spell it wrong. There's always a variant.
That is true. That's true. Because you can even misspell John.
You can.
You can misspell Chris.
I know. And people often do, which really surprises me. Alissa, thank you so much for coming on the podcast today.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, Chris. I look forward to coming back, hopefully.
Thank you for listening to this episode of the Easy Prey podcast. If you found this episode interesting, please leave a review at easyprey.com/review. Notes and a transcript of this episode with Alissa Knight can be found at easyprey.com/60.